You are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you.
5:50 in the morning, the 6th of June, 1944. Off the coast of Normandy, the largest invasion fleet in history, nearly 7,000 vessels, opens fire. Aboard the transports, 130,000 men wait for the ramps to fall. 5 years of occupied Europe lie behind this moment. This is D-Day and the 80 days that followed, the campaign that broke the German army in the West. Hitler called it the Atlantic Wall. Thousands of kilometers of bunkers, guns and beach obstacles from Norway to the Spanish border. But the wall was a crust, and behind it, the German command was divided. Field Marshal Rommel believed the invasion had to be smashed on the beaches in the first 24 hours. To his own staff, he put it plainly.
Believe me, the first 24 hours of the invasion will be decisive. For the Allies, as well as for us, it will be the longest day.
The panzers, he argued, must stand at the coast. His superior, von Rundstedt, wanted them held back, massed for one decisive counterblow inland. Hitler split the difference and kept the armored reserve under his personal orders. Across the Channel, everything waited on the weather. The 5th of June was unflyable. Eisenhower's forecasters found one fragile window. He scribbled a note to carry in his wallet in case the landings failed.
If any blame or fault attaches to the attempt, it is mine alone.
Then he gave the order, we go. The Germans knew the invasion was coming. The question was where, and the Allies had spent a year poisoning the answer. Operation Fortitude built a phantom army group in Kent, 1 million men who did not exist, commanded, on paper, by George Patton, the general the Germans feared most. Inflatable tanks, scripted radio traffic, and double agents all pointed the same way, at the Pas de Calais, the shortest road across the Channel. The real blow aimed 200 miles west at Normandy, and the deception held beyond all hope. For 7 weeks after D-Day, Hitler kept the 15th Army and its panzers waiting at Calais for an invasion that never came. It begins in darkness. Shortly after midnight, more than 1,200 aircraft cross the coast, carrying 3 airborne divisions. In the east, British glider troops land within meters of the bridges over the Orme. Pegasus Bridge is taken in 10 minutes. In the west, the American 82nd and 101st are scattered across the Cotentin by cloud and flak. Paratroopers fall miles from their drop zones into flooded fields and gunfire. But the chaos cuts both ways. The German command sees attacks everywhere and nowhere. By dawn, Sainte-Mère-Église is the first town in France to be liberated, and both flanks of the invasion are held. Hedgerows, 6:30 in the morning. Behind the naval barrage, the first waves run in across 5 beaches along 50 miles of coast. In the west, the Americans at Utah and Omaha. In the center and east, the British at Gold and Sword, the Canadians at Juno. At Utah, the current pushes the boats a mile south onto a weakly held shore. The general who landed with the first wave, Theodore Roosevelt Jr., looked at the map, then at the beach, and decided,
"We'll start the war from right here."
The beach is won within the hour. At Gold and Juno, armor grinds the defenses down by mid-morning. At Sword, the lead brigades turn inland towards Cannes. At Pointe du Hoc, Rangers scale a 100-foot cliff under fire to silence a battery. By mid-morning, 4 of the 5 beaches are secure. The 5th is Omaha. Omaha, 4 miles of sand beneath 100-foot bluffs, held by a full German division no one expected. The first wave loses almost everything. The amphibious tanks founder in the swell, landing craft drift onto the wrong sectors, and the exits. 5 draws cut through the bluffs are killing grounds. For 3 hours, the assault lies pinned on the shingle. Then destroyers run in close enough to scrape bottom, firing point blank, and small groups of infantry climb the bluffs between the strong points. By nightfall, the foothold is barely 2 kilometers deep. Utah cost some 200 casualties. Omaha cost around 2,400, bloody, but the wall was broken. Now came the race. 5 separate beachheads had to become one before the panzers could throw them back into the sea. British troops linked Gold and Juno on the first evening. The Americans fought through Carentan, and by the 12th of June, the front was a single bridgehead, 60 miles wide. Behind it, an artificial harbor, Mulberry, was towed across the channel in pieces and assembled off Arromanches. The build-up race began. Over 30,000 men ashore every day, with tanks, guns, and fuel. The Germans reinforced piecemeal, division by division, led by air attack on every road. The bridgehead held, but ahead lay the hedgerows. The bocage, a chessboard of tiny fields walled by ancient hedgerows, every one of them a ready-made fortress. The war of movement died here. In the east, Montgomery's offensives broke against the panzer divisions massed in front of Caen, a city marked down as a D-Day objective held out for a month. In the west, the Americans cut the Cotentin and took Cherbourg on the 26th of June, its port wrecked so thoroughly it was useless for weeks. Then they turned south, hedgerow by hedgerow, towards Saint-Lô, 7 kilometers in 17 days. 6 weeks after D-Day, the lodgment was barely 20 miles deep. The Germans were holding by spending men and armor they could not replace. The 25th of July, Operation Cobra. West of Saint-Lô, 1,500 heavy bombers lay a carpet of high explosive across a rectangle of German front, and the Panzerlehr division effectively ceases to exist. Through the gap, American armor pours south, Coutances, Avranches. In 6 days, the front tears open, and Patton's Third Army, activated at last, the phantom of Fortitude made real, fans out, west into Brittany, south to the Loire, and east towards Le Mans. The Battle of the Hedgerows becomes a war of movement, and the German left flank in Normandy simply ceases to exist. Hitler ordered the impossible: attack west, cut the Americans off at Avranches. The counterattack at Mortagne was smashed inside 4 days, and it drove the German armies deeper into a closing trap. Patton swung north through Argentan. The Canadians and Poles ground south through Falaise, between the pincers, the remnants of 2 German armies. On the 21st of August, the ring closed at Chambois. Inside the pocket, 10,000 dead, 50,000 prisoners, and roads carpeted with burnt-out vehicles for miles. Perhaps a third escaped through the gap, but they escaped on foot. Army Group B's mobile force had been destroyed in the field. After Falaise, there was no German front left in France, only a retreat. In 10 days, the Allied armies covered the distance to the season, a line they had not expected to reach for another month. On the 19th of August, Paris rose. Police, railwaymen, and resistance fighters barricaded the streets. Eisenhower had meant to bypass the city. Taking it would cost bombs, bullets, and 4,000 tons of food a day. De Gaulle insisted. Leclerc's Free French Armored Division raced ahead, and on the 25th of August, the German garrison surrendered. That afternoon, to a roaring crowd at the Hôtel de Ville, de Gaulle gave the city its words.
Paris, Paris outragé, Paris brisé, Paris martyrisé, c'est Paris libéré.
The next day, he walked down the Champs-Élysées. 4 years of occupation were over. 80 days. The cost of liberating Normandy, more than 200,000 Allied casualties. American, British, Canadian, Polish, French. German losses of perhaps 400,000 killed, wounded, or captured. And Normandy itself paid. Around 20,000 French civilians died under the bombs and the shells, and towns like Caen and Saint-Lô were ground to rubble. The campaigns destroyed a German army group, reopened the Western Front, and set the Allied armies on the road to Germany, 11 months from these beaches to the end of the war in Europe. Above Omaha, on the bluffs, the first wave climbed. 9,500 white markers face the sea. The sand below them is ordinary sand. What happened there on a grey morning in June was not.